Hello everyone, welcome to the 7th annual conference of WT2, Women Transforming Technology. So myself Neelam, I work as a senior manager with the VMware, and today I'm going to talk about the vBiasFinder, which is a framework which we have developed to uncover the unconscious bias, and it uses the AI in it. So before I start with the talk, let me ask you a riddle. So a father is about to bring his son to a job interview, applying for a position at a large stockbroker's company in the city. Just as they arrive at the company's parking lot, the son's phone rings. He looks at his father, who says, "Go ahead, answer it." The caller is the trading company's CEO, who says, "Good luck, son. You've got this." The son ends the call and once again looks at the father, who is still sitting next to him in the car. So how is this possible? The father is sitting just beside him, and who called him? I'll pause for 10 seconds. Just give it a thought. So if you have thought that the son has two fathers, that's not the correct answer. And most of the people thought that the son has two fathers, and one father is sitting beside him, and the other father has called, or maybe the father has pre-recorded the call. So the correct answer is the mother called, and the mother is the CEO. So, but unconsciously, we think the CEO means it will be a male person, not a female person, which is not a correct thing. And it is a bias which we hold. This is nothing but the unconscious bias which we are holding. So with this, let me go to the agenda. So I'll explain what is unconscious bias bit in detail. What are different types of unconscious bias? Why is it really important to detect the bias? Why we are even talking about it? And what is the proposed framework here? What framework we are proposing to detect the unconscious bias? And then the RASA framework, which is used behind this framework in the flowchart, and followed by the questions if you have any. So let me start. What is unconscious bias? With the riddle, you must have got the sense what is unconscious bias. So these are the learned stereotypes which we have learned over the time from our experiences, and it influences our behavior. So these are the automatic and deeply ingrained in our subconscious mind. So these are the assumptions about the social groups that affects our awareness or the conscious control. And this also shapes our likes and dislikes about the people, abilities, potentials, and character. So these unconscious biases influence our decision making. Right? And so whenever we take any decision, these biases are running in our mind without our knowledge. And most of the times, we are not even aware that we have any biases. If you ask any person, do you hold any unconscious bias? Do you hold any bias? That person will straight away say no. And few people, when they come across these situations, as I ask a riddle, maybe you will be surprised. Oh, I really hold that. Right? So that will be that that will make them aware that they also hold that biases. Now, what are different types of unconscious biases? So the first can be gender bias, which is very common, where we differentiate between a male and female. So girl child means the girl child will go to the arts stream. The boy child, he will take the science. Or if the female is there, her primary concern is or primary responsibility is family. If there's a male employee, his priority is his job. So these are the biases which we are holding. And while giving work or assigning responsibilities or promotions, we these biases come into our mind, right? And we may not give the challenging work to the female. So these all are the biases which we are holding. Now, the second bias can be related to the age. So we have the people from different age group in our offices, in our personal life. There also we hold some biases. This age group person should behave in this manner. This particular age group, young people, they can enjoy. So these are the biases. In office, when we see that oh, the person is aged, maybe he or she will not be able to put too much of effort now in the office work. So these are some of the examples related to the age bias, and there are many. Third can be the beauty bias. Beauty bias means if you see someone attractive, some person is smart, beautiful, then it means the person will be confident, competitive. He or she may be able to do the work more effectively. That's a bias we hold, as compared to the person who is less attractive, less beautiful, less smart. Right? So these are few examples, and if you see around you, there are multiple. The other can be the halo effect. Halo effect is like when you meet some person, you think you feel that there is some aura around him, and you in first impression itself or first sight itself, you get impressed by that person. Right? So you maybe you haven't spoken to that person, but still you haven't worked with that person, but it's still with that aura or the halo effect makes you feel that person is competitive. That person is very confident. Right? So there's a halo effect. Opposite to that can be horn effect. Horn effect is a negative connotation or negative impression about some person. So when you see some person, you get some negative person, you become judgmental. You judge that person. And that this person may not be confident. That person may not be competitive enough. I should not be assigning this work to him or her. Right? So these are a few types of unconscious biases. The other can be the conformity bias. So this is when in a group, when we are deciding upon something, everyone is concluding to one point, and in spite of me not able to conclude to that conclusion, we we will go with that conclusion because we don't want to be odd one out. And so we want to behave like a group. So this is nothing but the conforming to the group mentality. So this is the conformity bias. The other can be the affinity bias. If you meet some person who belongs to the same college, right, where you have studied, or who belong to from the same, he or she comes from the same region as you, or maybe same, he or she speaks the same language. So you connect to that person in very first meet, and you have some affinity for that person. So this is the affinity bias. So there are multiple. There are many other unconscious biases. So I will not go through all. So these are few examples which I have taken. Now, what does data says about these biases? So as per the data, 75% have an implicit preference for white people over black people. 76 more readily associate males with career and females with family. 70% more readily associates males with science and females with arts. 76% have preference for people without a disability. So there's the data. Data speaks. So there's the correct data. Now, why is it important, right, to address the unconscious bias? Why we are even talking about it? Why companies are so concerned about the unconscious bias? Why companies are spending a lot of their time and effort and money on giving the training to their employees for unconscious bias? Okay. So, unconscious bias, why companies are worried? Because it affects the thinking. It impacts hiring. And finally, it contributes to the lack of workforce diversity. So diversity is not only in terms of gender, it can be of the different age group, different skill set, different religion, different the people belonging to or speaking different languages, or people having disabilities. Those person also should get the opportunity to work. So if we are biased, then it will affect the diversity in a negative sense. Unconscious bias affects employees' interactions and then finally to employee satisfaction. So how you interact with a person, it it matters that what impression you're carrying. Are you being judgmental about that person, or what bias you're holding? So your conversation or how you converse, how you interact with that person changes. Now, while giving the project assignments or team assignments, unknowingly these biases come into picture. Right? So maybe if there's a female employee and you have some critical assignment, you will not give it to that female employee if you're holding that the bias that females means their priority is family. So in every set or in everything you can see the bias coming into picture. Performance evaluations, compensation, promotions while promoting. So there also biases come into picture. the client interactions, customer service. If you're interacting with, if a client is holding a bias, then maybe if female is resolving their issues, that person will not be confident that this female can resolve the issues, or he will be more comfortable with the male person. Right? And if you're calling some customer service desk, you will prefer a female to be there, or you will expect a female to be there. So those are again the biases. Openness to new ideas and innovative solutions. So how you accept the ideas or how open you are to the solution, that also depends from which person it is coming, what bias or what impression I am holding about that person. So these all things, because of all these things, it becomes very important to address unconscious bias. Again, the research has shown that the companies that celebrate diversity earn approximately 4% more in the EBIT margins compared to the other companies. As per the Boston Consulting study as well, companies with more diverse management teams focus more on innovation and show 19% higher revenues. And McKinsey report also says the same thing, that the gender diversity in executive top management are more competitive and experience 21% more profits compared to the peers. So now every company has its own agenda to be more diverse and inclusive. It's addressing the unconscious bias becomes very important step towards meeting that goal. So if they want more diverse the environment, more inclusive environment, then the unconscious bias, they should be able to detect and correct the unconscious bias. Right? And for correction, detection is the first step. Now we know that what is unconscious bias, what are the different types of unconscious bias, and why it is important to detect the unconscious bias. So let's come to the vBiasFinder, the framework which we have designed to detect the unconscious bias. So this framework is based on 3 approaches. The first is a scenario simulation, where we have taken the different scenarios and we give different profiles to the user, and based on the scenarios, the user has to select the people. So I'll go through the scenario simulation in the next slide. The second approach is the writing or speech of a person. How the person writes an email, how the person writes a job description. Is the job description inclined towards a group of people, or so how the job description is designed, how the letter is written, how memo or audio means, what keywords or what pronouns that person uses, the video, how he interacts with other people. So everything can be used or can be used to detect the biases. Right? And the third approach is a rapid fire Q&A, where we give the image to the person and a profession and role. And now the user has to map the profession and role with the image of the person. So how the mapping happens, that will give you an idea that whether the person is holding the unconscious bias or not. Now let me go through the first approach, that is a scenario simulation. So here we have taken 4 scenarios. First is the team selection, where a user is given up the set of profiles, the role, and the user has to make a team. So which person he chooses for one particular role will tell you whether the unconscious bias exists or not. Second scenario is a promotion. So where a set of profile is there, the user has all the skill set, and for which position the promotion is there. So all the details is there with the user. Now, which person the user is selecting for the promotion will tell you whether the bias exists or not. Third scenario is a mentor and mentee. So now you have to choose a mentor or mentee. Now the user whom he selects for a mentor or for a mentee, that will again tell you that whether the unconscious bias is there or not. Fourth scenario is the referrals, where a person or your user is asked to refer some for a position. So that will also give us some idea. Now let's see some examples of these scenarios. So first is the team selection. So a set of candidate profiles and set of roles to form a team will be given to the user. Now user has to map the candidate to the roles given. Now think about it. The tripping thought is here is that who will be picked for the role of the team lead, right? So who will be picked for the architect and who will be picked for the manager? Do we think that manager needs a male person or a female can also be a good manager? So, so these are the triggering thoughts. Think about it. Now, second scenario is a promoter candidate. A person, the user has been given all the profiles, and the user has to select a person for a promotion. So, whom he selects? A long timer or a person belonging to the same cohort or group? Who you will select? Just think about it. Now, third scenario is a mentor-mentee scenario, where person will be made to select a mentor and mentees from the set of profiles. Now, whom will be selected from the same background, same gender? So, whom you will select? Think about it. The fourth is a referrals. A person will be made to refer a candidate for a job. So, user has all the details, the skill set of a person, and what skill sets are required for that particular job. So, whom he will select? He or she will select, right? So, whom the user will select? Will he or she will select a person who is with disabilities? Will you select that person? Think about it. Now, once we get all the data is analyzed and it's grouped. There are different attributes which has been taken. So age will be one attribute, performance, personality, gender, region, cohort, culture. So we take all the attributes and we try to group them. So age, if all the results points to the same age group, then it means the age bias exists. If the all results point to the same gender, so it can point that is the gender bias exists. Similarly, the region, cohort, culture, familiarity, this can be grouped in the one group, so which can be called as the affinity bias. Performance, personality, recency, these can be clubbed together as a confirmation bias. So with these attributes, we can detect whether the bias exists or not. And if the results vary, means it doesn't belong to one particular group, then we can say that the unconscious bias is not there. Right? But if all the results are pointing towards one group, then that means unconscious bias exists. Of which particular type, age bias or conformity or affinity, that can be told. Now, how this chatbot is designed. So how vBiasFinder is designed. So vBiasFinder uses a RASA architecture, which is an open source, and we have designed a chatbot using this RASA architecture. So if you can see that RASA architecture has mainly three components. First is the NLU component, which is the natural language component. So it takes the input from the user, extracts the intent and entities, and sends that intent and entities to the dialog management group unit. Their tracker and slots to subcomponents are there, which tracks the state of the chat bot and decides what extracts the next section based on the previous sections. Right? And what will be the action results and stores the results in the slots. Now this next section is sent to the message generator. Based on the next section, the message generator, which has a predefined templates with placeholders, sends the message to the user. And this continues. Then once user gets the answer, then he will enter the next question or next input. Then again, that will be entities and intent will be detected from that, and that will be forwarded to the dialog management and then message generator. So this continues. On the right hand side, you can see the database and URL request. So if we need any information, so as we want the profiles or the roles, so that will be stored in the database. So we can either use the SQL queries to extract the roles and team profiles, or we can make it a API based also, REST API interface, and we can extract that from the database. So now let me take one scenario and let me explain you that how it works. So the user has keyed in hi. Now this has gone to the NLE component. It extracts that this is the initiation and the user wants to interact or converse with, wants to start the conversation. Now this Intent and entity has will go to the dialog management. Dialog management will send the next section to the message generator. And the message generator will output the message, how may I help you? Now the user sees this message and the user keys in unconscious bias detection. So this again goes to the NLU component. It detects the intent that the user wants to detect the unconscious bias. So it again go to the dialog management and the message generator, the output message goes as for which scenario? Team selection, promotion, mentor-mentee, or referral. Now again, the user keys in team selection. So NLU component again processes that intent again, and then it gives you the message called, please select the profiles from this. And this URL is coming from the database. User selects the profiles 1579 some numbers and sends it back to the chatbot. Chatbot again outputs the message, please map the candidate to the roles present under this URL. This database, this is stored in the database again. Now the user maps the roles with the teams, the team members, and gives it in, as an input to the chatbot. Now, based on this data, the mapping, chatbot decides based on the attributes, all the attributes or the personal information is available through the chatbot, age, gender, religion, skill set, everything. So based on this data, it processes, it analyzes and gives back the result whether the bias exists or not. And if bias exists, which kind of bias exists. So maybe it can be the age bias or it can be gender bias. So this is how this chatbot works. Right, so in this case, I have taken only one approach, the example of one approach, which is a scenario based. So now in future work, we will be extending this chatbot to analyze the mails, videos, the voice to identify the unconscious bias. And icons and image can be used instead of the profiles and see if the candidate displays bias with respect to the color or the looks of the person. And this can be enhanced. The more you train the chatbot, more accurate it becomes. So more and more sample data can be used to train and provide more analytics in the future. So, and it will then it be possible to provide the solutions and suggest various trainings also to overcome the identified bias. So that's all from my side. In case you have questions, please put that in the chat. Thank you. Thanks a lot for listening.